Welcome to Positive Solutions for Families. Positive Solutions is an evidence-based, user-friendly parenting program, and it is a series of 7 sessions that we will be going through. This is obviously session 1. We're recording these sessions for both families and for professionals who work with young children so that they have access to it. You can look at it and go back over it again if you missed something, and you can share it with your friends. So the majority of this is going to be kind of moving down to looking at helping parents feel confident working with their children, helping them build relationship with their children and with others, helping children learn how to follow directions and manage their emotions. We're going to have a lot of information here for you. To introduce ourselves, I'm excited to be here, and I am Karen Anthony, and I work at Oakland Schools as the Early Childhood Mental Health Consultant. And I work primarily with our preschool programs, but I have experience working with children 0 to 5 or 6-ish. And I love my job and I love what I do. So I'm excited to be here. And with me is my friend.
Hi, I'm Christine Hodge. I am the Associate Coordinator of the Great Start Collaborative here at Oakland Schools and in Oakland County. And I am a preschool teacher at heart. That's where I did all of the bulk of my work as an adult. And so I come with a perspective of that 3-4-year-old mentality. And this Positive Solutions fits really well into that piece because the kind of things that we're going to go over with for parents and for professionals that work with those parents, it's really good, high quality teaching early childhood experiences. That's exactly what it is. It's the same thing that we do in a classroom to help children be able to regulate and figure out what they need to do each day. Is the same thing we're going to be sharing with you. So that's a little bit of why we were here. And as Karen said in the first slide, these recorded sessions are here for both parents and for family caregivers to listen to and participate virtually and get some great tips and tools to help promote positive and effective parenting to address challenging behaviors in their homes. So when we say parents and or family caregivers, parents refers to anyone that would be with a child. So this might be a grandparent. This might be someone who works childcare in that family's home. Whoever is working with that child or that family on the regular basis, that's what we kind of refer to.
In addition, I just wanted to add that we are available. Our emails are going to be shared on the web page. So I just want to make sure that people know that Christine and I are available to help support you with questions or concerns. For professionals and parents, we want to be able to support you in working with children.
Yeah, exactly. So that professionals piece. So if these are really created so that if you are a professional that works with families, you can use this as kind of like a tool to help you kind of guide through that process as well. So this is here for both pieces. So if a family is doing it, or if a professional is doing these with families in their care, they can use these as kind of a tool to help with that process and watch them themselves. So it might be something that would be helpful. So we're hoping that this is going to help out a bunch of you in a bunch of different ways. So thank you for joining us. Okay, so let's just go quickly over what these next 7 sessions are going to be. There are 7 separate times that we would encourage you to view these. For parents that are watching them, we would encourage you to spend at least a few days working on what has happened in session 1 before you move on to session 2, so that you can kind of see maybe some changes in your child's behavior, and you can possibly see how things are moving along. So in other words, don't watch all 7 at once. Take a couple days off in between. But here are the 7 sessions that we'll be going over. Making the connection, that's just starting us out and getting us to be able to understand what Positive Solutions is all about. That's what we're here for today. Keeping it positive is session 2. That's really focusing on the positive ways you can interact with your child to see more of behaviors you want to see and less of the behaviors you don't want to see. Session 3, behavior has meaning, is exactly what it says. If your child is doing something, it has a meaning. They're telling you something. You just need to figure out what that is and how you can help them. Session 4 is just can't be spoken strongly enough. The power of routines. Having a routine can make all the difference in the world. Session 5 is starting to get into the nitty gritty of it. Teach me what to do. Now that I've gotten all this information, I know why my child's doing things. I've set up the routines. Now what do I do? Responding with a purpose is session 6. And so that's the response that you give, why you give it, and what it's going to mean in the future. And then our last session is bringing it all together with a plan. Just so you know, these first 2 sessions are very, very basic. First almost 3 sessions are pretty basic, but we're going to dig into it when we get into a little bit further. Okay, so what's happening today? We're going to do some introductions, which Karen and I have already introduced ourselves, so we'll kind of talk about what that looks like in a virtual world too. We'll talk about the purpose of the group and have set some ground rules for that. Then we will discuss connecting with your children and encouraging your child. Okay, so for families watching, this is our session that we would ordinarily kind of do this in person, and we would ask families to share this information about themselves. But for families that are watching, we want you to keep your child's age in mind, because developmentally, children progress at different rates. And just keep that in mind all the time. Karen and I will be sharing stories throughout this time. We've facilitated these sessions for many years, and we're going to have stories about our own personal children. We're going to have stories about that families shared with us that we will be sharing with you. We will be talking about kids that are 2. We'll be talking about kids that are 7. So keep your child's age in mind as we're going through this, to make sure that you know, does this apply to me? Does it not really apply to me? Just keep that in mind. The second thing we'd like you to keep in mind is thinking about that positive thing that comes to mind about your children, about children in general, but specifically about your child. What's the positive thing that you can keep with you throughout the day?
For professionals who are using these, this is an opportunity where if you're doing this with a group, whether it's virtually or in person, it's an opportunity for people to share a little bit about their families and to get to know each other better. Because when you're doing this in groups, one of the best things parents can do is make friends with one another and have each other as a support system. So, so as professionals, again, encouraging that piece and really talking about and getting to know those families individually, so that as you move forward, you can tackle some of the real issues that are happening in families' lives. So as you move forward in doing groups, if you are in a space where you're doing this as a professional, you do want to set some ground rules so that families are coming together and kind of all thinking in the same way, that you do want to start on time. You want to create some ground rules about, phones and things like that, which is just pretty typical for groups in general. But you also want to make sure that everyone knows that we're respecting one another, that you're keeping information confidential within the group, and that you take the learning home with you, but the stories stay. Also, if you're doing this as a parent, I just want you to think of, like, individually, if you're at home, really you might want to think about, timing wise of when you're going to listen to these sessions. You might want to think that, every Tuesday after I drop the kids at school, I'm going to go home and sit down in front of the computer and do this for an hour. But it is important to kind of set in your own mind, your own ground rules about how you're going to use this information. And then maybe even that if you need to reach out for help, how would you go about that? But I think it's important that whether you're doing this individually at home or you're doing this as a group, that you do have some ground rules for yourself.
This is a little activity that I want you to go back into your heads a little bit for. And this activity is in the family handbook. I'm just going to pull that up for you to see what it is. This is available on our website, and for those professionals, it will also be available to you on our website as well, just so that you know that's the family handbook. Like that. Okay. So this relationship activity, I want you to think back in your minds a little bit and think about someone who was very important to you when you were growing up. I want you to think, what did this person do that made them so important and special to you? And how did this person make you feel? Now, for professionals, we would ordinarily throw this out to the group for our parents to kind of give us some feedback. Today, Karen and I will just share that out with you, that person who was special to you when you were little. Karen, you want to go first?
Sure. I can think of a couple. I can think of a couple people. I mean, obviously, no, not obviously, but for me, my mom was a huge impact in my life. She was a really good mom. She was good at cuddling and hugging and being there no matter what happened. And even as I grew, she continued to be that person. So for a lot of people, it may not be your actual parent, but for me it was. And I'm fortunate in that my mom was there as a protector and a fierce, I guess, mama bear in a sense, in taking care of her cubs, all of us. So it felt good. I mean, and if we think about that piece of it, the feeling that I get when I think of her makes me feel like I'm filled, like I'm just fulfilled of, full of love, that somebody really loved and took care of me for as many years as she did. So that's my person.
So for mine, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. And so my mom was a great mom, but she wasn't really emotionally there by the time I came along. It had been a lot to raise 6 kids before me. So as an adult, I completely understand that. But I did have some special people in my life. And one of them was my Uncle Jimmy. He was my mom's youngest brother. So I think he kind of got being the youngest. She was from a family of 8 as well. And, being the youngest of 7 and having 4 older sisters, they always got the attention. They got, no matter what it was, they would always be sought after in group settings. And my uncle would seek me out. He would send me an individual birthday card every year that was not a birthday card. So it might be a bar mitzvah card, and I'm not Jewish. It might be, a menopause card when I was 13. So he was just this kind of silly man that would seek me out. And he would also talk to me when he'd come into my house. He'd be like, "Hi, how's your day, Chris?" So that was just kind of a neat thing. He made me feel special. So I think that that's something to think about. The one thing that Karen and I inevitably have found in every time that we've talked with groups in this class, these sessions, these workshops, inevitably, everyone that talks about someone that was special to them, it is never about money. Neither one of us have ever heard someone say, "My uncle bought me the most stuff. My aunt spent the most money on me. She took me on trips." Never have I heard that. Karen, have you ever heard that?
No, I think you're right.
It's never
That's a
about
good
money.
point.
It's just about focusing in time, right?
Mhm.
So that's just something I would like to keep in mind. And on that note, we want to make sure that someone's like that for your child or your children. And every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. This is a quote from Rita F. Pearson, who was a doctor of education, and she was a lifelong educator, like over 40 years. She came from a family of educators, her parents, her grandparents. She taught at many different levels, from elementary school straight up through high school, and she wrote a few books. She was also a renowned public speaker. There's another famous quote that she has as well, that I really like, and she tells of once hearing a colleague say, "They don't pay me to like kids." And her response was, "Kids don't learn from people they don't like." The reason why I share this with you is because in some children, not all, but in some children, you need to help teach them appropriate behavior. Some kids just figure out what happens each day, but some don't. And you need to be a teacher for your child. You need to figure out how to get them to learn from you. And of course, your child likes you, but there are ways that you can even make it more special for them. So really thinking about being your child's champion is what we want to talk about here. And Karen, you want to take it away?
Yeah, and that kind of leads nicely into this next slide where we talk about connecting with your children. And connecting with your children really is about thinking about the benefits, but we know the reality is there are barriers and obstacles and challenges in dealing with young children. It's not an easy job. It is something that a lot of parents struggle with. Just coordinating their everyday lives can be a struggle. So knowing that, taking that time to say that there are benefits to spending time with my child. Children do grow with that. They get an increased sense of self-esteem. When a child is more connected, kind of like Christine was saying, they are more likely to learn from you when they have that good, the good, strong connection. And so it makes the household run better when things are connected there. Children are happier, you are happier. However, again, the reality is we know there are going to be some barriers in this. Sometimes there's siblings who don't get along and you're dealing with that, which is very common. Sometimes the family is just feeling stress. And so knowing that just the environmental stressors that can get to a family can be a lot. So there are barriers that can get in the way, but we have to think about how can we take those benefits to outweigh the barriers that can get in the way of being with your child. So it really comes down to those really small moments. We are not looking here for huge things to be happening. We're looking for small times that you can connect. So one of the things that Christine and I, and we kind of have come up with our own little set of rules, but we've found that this really works, is having times when you give your child positive attention. So putting the phone away, turning the television off, and spending one-on-one time with your child for 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes. We're not talking about an hour. We're not talking about huge lengths of time. If you could give a child individual attention for 10 minutes a day consistently, you will see a difference in the way that your child behaves. And so it really does come down to, yes, life is busy, but do you have 10 minutes? And most people would say, yeah, we can figure that out. So you might want to spend that time reading a book or going for a walk. I mean, geez, while the weather is nice, go outside and go for a walk. You can sing songs. You can prepare dinner together. That's even something that you can do as a group. Making sure that you are taking time to notice the things that your child does, that you're going through their backpack after school to pull out whatever it is that they've done, and created during that school day. So it's really important to just look at those really tiny moments and focus on those.
And do you want to talk for a second while we're talking about this, about anything that you've heard from families about these 10 minutes that makes it a little bit more difficult? Is there anything that you can share that might help with this?
So, interestingly, so again, like Christina said, we've been doing these for a while, and I feel like the families that I've talked to doing this, that as they've started to do this, when they've committed that 10 minutes. So it's really following the child's lead. It's doing what that child wants for 10 minutes. So I literally have seen dads play dress up and play, tea party with little girls. I've seen her moms play ninja with their boys. I mean, and it doesn't have to be so, boy, girl, genderish, but thinking about what does your child enjoy and joining in on that. So those are some of the things that I've heard families and parents do. Again, it can be something as simple as playing a card game. I mean, it doesn't have to be for long stretches of time. It can be those 10 minutes. And I'll be honest, I've talked to some parents who have done this, and in week 3, when we go back to say, how is things going? Those families that have done this consistently, 10 minutes a day, every day, have come back at week 3 saying, I'm not nearly having as much problems with my kids that I did before. Like something has changed. And to me, that's what changed.
I know for myself, a couple of times I've heard from parents, a couple of the barriers that have seemed to pop up. One of them being that, kids want to extend out the play longer and longer. I gave my child a half hour and I did it for a week and a half. And I think that 10 minutes piece is really important because we all are busy. And if you have more than one child, if you have, 3 or 4 children, that's an hour of your time because it is individual play kind of to do what that child wants to do. So, you want to make sure that you make it manageable for you to do long term because Karen, you and I have talked about before, someone I think asked you, how long do I have to do this for? And you're like,
forever. Till they're 21. I don't know. Yeah.
It is one of those things that is kind of a struggle for some families. So making sure you set it up so that you can think long term. This is something you're going to be doing forever. So when that parent shared that with me, and she said he kept wanting to say, I want to finish the game. He was very upset. I said to her, you just pick up the game as it is and you move it to the side and you say, I can't wait to finish with you tomorrow. I can't wait to finish it with you tomorrow because I'm anxious because I want to win. And you put it that way so that it's something that you're looking forward to. And it's not always going to be easy, but Karen's right. If you put these pieces in place, you can see a big difference.
So in your family handbook on page 2, there are some the activity there really goes into taking just this few minutes to jot down some ideas about some of the things that you might want to do that would work for your family. And just think of the things that you might want to try, maybe things that you're already doing, but you also may want to think of something completely different that you hadn't ever thought of before. And what we'll do at our next session is we'll review these and see how they worked, what worked, what didn't work. And it gives you an opportunity to really review at that point. So the next session, we will go through and talk in more detail. In addition, this session also comes with some role-playing cards. So they're there and they're available to you to go look at and see and try them out if you're interested. They are ways that they illustrate positive comments and encouragement with children. So it's a really nice way to adapt some of this information into a role play kind of situation.
Okay, so just a little bit of ideas about positive interactions with your child and encouraging your child. We will go into this a little bit further coming up in the next few weeks. But in these role-playing cards that Karen's talking about, it gives some exact examples of kind of how to do this and what works and what doesn't work. But these 6 things will help you to really think about when you're encouraging your child. Get your child's attention. Make sure that they're looking at you and you're looking at them. Be specific and say what you see. Keep it simple. Avoid combining positive feedback with criticism. This is something that I still struggle with my 25 and 22-year-old daughters. I will still sometimes give them a positive thing and I'll be like, I like that shirt that you're wearing better than the ones you usually wear. That's not helpful. Okay. Be sincere and genuine. So you don't want to be saying this. Even young children know when you're being fake. So you want to be genuine about this. Double the impact with physical warmth. This can be something as simple as a pat on the back, as a thumbs up, It doesn't even have to be a physical touch, but a thumbs up that it's a physical movement that they're seeing. Hey, I liked how you cleaned up your toys. Thumbs up with that. And use positive comments and encouragement with your child in front of others. This one is huge. I'm in my 50s, and I grew up with parents in their 60s and 70s who did not ever want to use positive encouragement in front of other adults about their own children because that was braggy, I think, is what it was. So it wasn't something that I experienced, but it's something that my children, and I think children that I cared for in preschool would flourish when you'd say something to another adult like, have you noticed how well Johnny cleaned up today? He put all the trucks away. Where I noticed it. Have you noticed it? That praise that they get. I give you one hesitation about this. If you have a teenager, say 13, 14 years old, you wouldn't necessarily want to praise them in front of other teenagers that are that age. Sometimes that's a little bit embarrassing. So just keep that in mind. You always want to know what your child is, and you want to know your crowd, know your audience, right? So that's the one piece that I want to share with that.
Good point, Christine, though. Teenagers are a whole different kind of people. And so the preteen, teenage years, they are just a whole different kind of people. And so, as you said in the very beginning, considering your child's age as you look at some of these pieces, you might need to adapt a little bit, especially for those preteen and teen.
Yeah, talk to that for a minute about how this can be used with any age, Karen. Like,
so
how you would...
I think you made a really good point that, younger kids really do get a lot out of overhearing you praising them to another adult. And sometimes, again, you can do it very matter of fact that I did this on purpose. But I think little kids hear that and it can really fill their tank. It really fills them up. But again, just like you said, like as kids get older and they move into preteen years, their connections with their friends become, in their mind, more important than their connections with their families. And so doing anything that would be the slightest bit embarrassing for them is just something you have to really be cautious about. So just consider again that what age your child is at and what does that really mean for them as you're encouraging them. And if you notice too on this, there's no encouraging things that are things like, I'm going to give you something or I'm going to pay you something. This is all about a connection. This is all about words that we use and how we are connecting to somebody. It has nothing to do with a bribe or a reward. It's really, the reward is that I said something nice about you and you loved it. And so that's the piece that's the reward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it is, I did read be specific and say what you see, but I can't stress that enough. This isn't just good job. This is good job cleaning up your room. Good job putting the trucks in the bin. You want to be specific in that praise because that part is super important. Okay, so now let's try it out a little bit. Again, look in your family handbook on page 3. We would like you to find at least 5 times in the next week or the next few days when you give your child positive comments and encouragement, remembering those 6 items on the slide before. So be specific in your praise. Make sure you have their attention. You want to be genuine. You want to be real with them, right? So you want to go through those 6 things and then just jot it down. It says write down what you said and did. This doesn't have to be a long drawn out. You don't have to keep a journal about this unless you'd like to. Then you're welcome to do that. But grab a sticky note and just say, hey, was so happy when Johnny cleaned up the cars and I mentioned it. Worked well. And then kind of reflect on how did your child respond? How do you think they felt? And how did you feel? How did you feel? Like, did you see, wow, I hadn't seen that happen before? just something to keep in mind. If you can find 5 times to do that in the next little bit.
And the 5 times can be just things that are happening throughout your day. It doesn't have to be anything special or different that you're doing. I'm just going to use, for example, my granddaughter, who is almost 2, and she is to the point where she can't necessarily put on her own shoes yet, but she can go get them and she can bring them to me when it's time to go someplace. So it's the idea that I can say to her, I need you to get your shoes, and she will go and find them and bring them to me, and I'll help her to put them on. And so my response to her was, you brought me your shoes. Oh my goodness, you went and found them by yourself and you brought them to me. That you're such a big girl. And so that's really what we want to be able to encourage, is just those everyday things that you're responding to them in a positive way, because kids pick up on that and they'll want to do it again.
Yeah, that's a perfect example for the next slide, encouraging statements. It's exactly what we're talking about. You put everything in the toy box. Wow, you did such a great job picking up your toys tonight. Lila, you brought your shoes to me. Thank you. You're growing up, right? You shared your toys with me. It's so much fun to play with you. You were being such a great helper when you helped me bring the groceries inside. Thank you for using your inside voice when your sister was sleeping. So all of these things are super simple, but they're very specific. Thanks for being quiet while your sister was sleeping. I know that was hard because you wanted to jump around and play.
Yeah, I look at these and I even think, again, it's the combination of the words and the physical action that we might put along with those words. So even a smile on your face is giving that warmth back to a child. Again, like you were saying, like it might be a high five, it might be a hug, it might just be a pat on the back. It could be anything, but that again, you're kind of doubling your hopefully your responses back from children by being able to give the verbal along with the nonverbal. It's really important. Okay. So what we want you to be able to do between now and the next time we meet is make sure that you're doing these activities. I mean, I know that we've already said to do them, but I'm going to say it again. You need to make sure that you're doing the activities. The activities are not just homework and then they're gone. These are things that we want you to continue to do. And as you continue to build in these positive pieces, first of all, it leaves a lot less room for the negative to happen. And as you build in the positive pieces, it really does start to become a family and a home life that becomes more filled with more positives as opposed to the negatives. And the more that you do that and the more that you practice it and get used to it, the more that you will see those positives come about. So your homework is to complete activity 2 in your handbook and activity 3 in your handbook. And activity 2, remember, is the connect. You really want to think about how you're connecting with that child. And again, we recommend 10 minutes a day to really spend time doing something that that child loves doing. Not necessarily that you might love to do, but you're going to do it. And then activity 3, where we talk about the positive comments, making sure that you're noticing when the things are going well and you're encouraging it.
Yeah, so thank you for joining us. That's our first session. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you were able to follow along with where we were going through everything. Remember, as Karen said earlier, if you have any questions, on the Great Start Collaborative website are both of our email addresses. And you can also reach out to our Help Me Grow phone line for any kind of parenting tips or tricks or anything that you'd like to dig into. We have some real live care coordinators that will respond via text or live chat, or if you give them a phone call, they will respond that way as well. So whatever, there are plenty of ways to reach out. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here. And we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.